Is teaching an art or a science? Is it primarily a practical activity or a technical one? In this audio, I'd like to share some insights I got from the book written by Peter Woods and Bob Jeffrey titled Teachable Moments: The Art of Teaching. Teaching consists of multiple forms of understanding and representation. It's not just a matter of scientific rationality or cognition in words. Teaching refers to the quite remarkable qualities to sequence narratives, to construe analogically, to conceive figuratively, to consider tonally, to think musically, or to construct maps and diagrams, to make signs and symbols with our bodies. Indeed, at times, an important part of teaching is even not knowing. For example, to explain might kill the effect of a poem, which requires the imagination to roam free. The art of teaching here lies in the teacher's judgment in circumstances where there is no right answer, and where we get to know through all our senses, not just the mind. How then do we express the art of teaching? The teacher's art is expressed through performance. The curriculum is the main vehicle for this, but the curriculum is not a thing or a course of study. It is a complicated and continual process of environmental design, a symbolic material, and human environment that is ongoingly reconstructed, revisited. If curriculum is in fact a design problem, then by its very nature, it is an aesthetic act. In many ways, it is more like painting a picture than building a bridge. Several authors elaborate further on what it is involved in teaching performance. Teaching is primarily a practical activity rather than a technical one. It involves a constant flow of problematic situations which require teachers to make judgments about how best to transfer their general educational values into classroom practice. Interpreted in the language of the practical teaching quality would have little to do with the skillful application of technical rules, but instead would relate to the capacity to bring abstract ethical values to bear on concrete educational practice, a capacity which teachers display in their knowledge of what educationally is required in a particular situation and their willingness to act so that this knowledge can take a practical form. This is similar to Eisner's 1985 point about managership. For Eisner, educational improvement comes not from the discovery of scientific methods that can be applied universally or from particular personalities, but rather from enabling teachers to improve their ability to see and think about what they do, or in other words, their art of appreciation, a subtle ability to discriminate. This contributes to what Polanyi and Pratt 1975 described as tacitly held practical knowledge, or what Tripp calls practical professionalism. Tripp contrasts this with scientifically verified knowledge, which is still important but cannot account for the expertise of all successful teachers. He writes, "Is this not expertise which comes from intuition, experience, and right-mindedness rather than scholarly disciplinary knowledge?" Such teaching is expressive and emergent and cannot be set up in advance through, for example, objectives. Some situations may call for this, but employed as a general framework, it forecloses on so many possibilities and opportunities for educational advancements. Teaching requires ends and opportunities to be created in the process. Teaching requires ends to be created in process, in the course of interaction with students rather than preconceived and efficiently attained. This is why teachers' almost instinctive judgment or intuition is so important. Jackson in 1992 does not recognize Waller's description of teaching. He is convinced that teaching has made a big difference in his and in others' lives. He cannot verify this against some external reality or conventional indicators. In considering what teaching has done for him, Jackson relies not on scientific evidence, but on intuition, what feels right to him. This is far from being a matter of guesswork and involves a host of factors to do with such things as principles, knowledge, and experiences. It is to do, in short, with the sort of person he has become. It is clear this is one with distinct artistic leanings. Educators have so much to learn from the Romantics, and I quote, "They constantly sought to look past the world or through it, to see beyond the surface meaning of things. They strove to read their surroundings much as one might read a complicated text or a piece of scripture. Lovers of nature they certainly were, but they also worshipped the human imagination, whose power to envision more than the eye alone could behold was looked upon as the ultimate source of artistic achievement. Without desire, teaching becomes arid and empty. It loses its meaning. Teaching is not a mechanical exercise. You must throw your heart into it. Some find it difficult to talk dispassionately about teaching. This does not mean that the use of emotion is completely undisciplined and unchanneled. Clarity and guidance is needed. Emotion is also a subject of development as well as a means of motivation and contextualization. Students' emotional development through drama, through narrative and story, through relationships, and the general ethos of the classroom and the school is a matter of prime concern. The emotions are also important for cognition. There are occasions when the emotions cause the senses to be heightened, such that sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and the tactile send stronger images to the brain. Artistic teaching takes risk and potentially breaks rules. It can question the boundaries of our existence. Exploration involves freedom to try out new ways, new activities, different solutions, some of which will inevitably fail. It is important that education provides that kind of opportunity and disposition to play and to take it to the limit, or to be able to play with ideas is to feel free to throw them into new combinations, to experiment, and even to fail. Play stimulates the educational imagination and increases the ability to see and take advantage of new opportunities. This is not to say that in some important respects, teaching is not a science, nor that the scientific study of teaching has not much to offer. Indeed, we would claim that our own approach is scientific in several ways. For example, in its concern for validity and in trying to identify general properties. But it would appear that the artistic side of teaching has been and is in danger of becoming even more and are valued. The need for creative teaching. Teaching needs to be creative for the following reasons. 1. Every situation is different. A multiplicity of factors affect the teaching moment, involving such shifting elements as the state of knowledge, space and time, cultural considerations, resources, human capacity, and predilection. Judgment and belief regarding actions to be performed can never attain more than a precarious probability. Practical activity deals with individualized and unique situations which are never exactly duplicable and about which, accordingly, no assurance is possible. Only so much is predictable. There is a need, therefore, for teachers to be flexible. It is not a matter of having certain fixed solutions that can be applied to certain fixed problems, nor of reflecting on the possibilities and making a conscious decision about which combination of actions to take. Rather, skill and judgment are required in selecting from and applying existing knowledge in what's sometimes called as knowledge in action. Much of this is embedded deep within the teacher's subconscious and operated intuitively. Teachers may find it difficult to articulate in words the reasons for their actions, but this is typical of artistic accomplishments. There has been a proliferation of new policy which threatens to intensify teachers' work and empower them. Responses must be creative. Given constrained circumstances and practicalities, the translation of the crude, abstract simplicities of policy text into interactive and sustainable practices of some sort involves productive thought, invention, and adaptation. Policies create circumstances in which the range of options available in deciding what to do are narrowed or changed, or particular goals or outcomes are set. All of this involves creative social action, not robotic reactivity. 3. Tensions and dilemmas in teaching are proliferating. Teachers are constantly in their everyday practice wrestling with a number of dilemmas, often contemporaneously, and having to make decisions about them. Some of these are when to teach individual children and when the whole class, when to make decisions for children and when to allow them to make decisions, whether to put the emphasis on intrinsic or extrinsic motivation, whether to concentrate on a narrow range of control represented by the child as a student or a broader range represented by the whole child. In general, teachers would be concerned with how to transform dilemmas into educational chances, how to maximize the possibilities, how to convert what might seem in some circumstances and constraints to what become in other circumstances opportunities. There is no single right answer to this kind of problem, but rather as multiple potential solutions whose effectiveness is largely unknown prior to the act of teaching. 4. Teaching is an act of faith, which requires for many strong investment of the self. To adapt the identity of a teacher was simply to be yourself in the classroom, and how they linked the notions of being yourself and being whole. Others have testified how, with this level of commitment, teachers have to feel right in order to perform to full effect. Teachers are not technicians, bland mediators, or implementers of others' programs. Most have strong beliefs and values which are deeply involved in their teaching, and through which the requirements of state, parents, governors, and not least students have to be mediated. Teachers need to be creative, therefore, to secure the personal touch, to adapt the curriculum so that they can feel a sense of ownership of the knowledge to be transmitted and or learned, so that they can feel in control of the pedagogical process, and so that they can develop a personal style. We conceive of style here not in terms of the generalized teaching styles that have featured so prominently in primary school researches. It's a set of habits that includes gestures, body movements, facial expressions, and tone of voice. The term encompasses a teacher's customary ways of attending to students. For example, how he or she typically responds to what they say and do. These habits or elements of working style reflect more than personality, as well more than conventional or instrumental behavior. They can be seen to reveal the interest, the involvement, the expectations that guide the teacher's efforts. These expressive dimensions of a teacher's conduct, especially in the minutiae of classroom life, which are often overlooked because they appear trivial and mundane, exert considerable moral influence on students. Number 5. Students require creative teaching in at least two ways. Much learning is a gradual, slowly cumulative process, but sometimes there are extraordinary leaps. Totally unexpected opportunities to secure and advance in a pupil's learning may occur. There is a need to recognize these when we see them, for they may be transient and not occur again. A need to know how to grasp the opportunity and to maximize gain. A need to know how to construct situations so that opportunities have a chance to happen. This may mean ringing the changes in order to find ways in to children so that they can break out common terms used among primary teachers in describing their practice. The second way derives from the fact that students are not just flesh and blood, but also emotional and cultural beings. They need to relate to what is taught, to recognize its relevance to their concerns, to have their imagination stimulated, to feel motivated to learn. In some instances, where situations of basic conflict prevail, teachers and students negotiate a working consensus, an agreement on work rates and sanctions that secures a modicum of returns, but falls somewhat short of inspired teaching and learning. To achieve the latter, everyone has to feel right. The school day has to be tinctured with feelings of excitement, involvement, curiosity, personal identification, being caught up with a group in a shared venture. Number 6. The teacher is naturally creative in the view of the general theoretical approach behind the research, that of symbolic interactionism. Plummer, 1983, page 1 to 5, points to 4 central criteria: human subjectivity and creativity, showing how individuals respond to social constraints and actively assemble social worlds. It must deal with concrete human experiences, thought, feelings, action through their social and especially economic organization, and not just their inner psychic and biological structuring. It must show a naturalistic, intimate familiarity with such experiences, and there must be a self-awareness by the sociologist of the ultimate moral and political role in moving towards a social structure in which there is less exploitation, oppression, and injustice, and more creativity, diversity, and equality. Number 7. There is a need for genuine creativity. It has been noted how teachers partly organize pupils' creative work to reproduce conventional or unorthodox reality, and how teachers' creative public displays were often at the expense of pupils' learning. They defined children's creative work as being an expression of their development and acted in such a way as to make the nature of their creative products correspond to the presumed stages of development. Similarly, a number of reputedly creative teaching approaches have been shown to be nothing of the sort. More recently, child centered progressivism, which has been so influential in primary schools over the past 30 years, has come under attack. Remember, we teach children, not subjects, learning how to learn rather than what to learn, discovery, not instruction. Given the views of the unpredictable nature of teaching and the serendipitous elements that attend its success, we believe that we can recognize teaching effectiveness, if at all, only after the fact. In our quest, therefore, to understand the nature of creative teaching, we need to seek for teachers who seem to exemplify in abundance the qualities previously identified. These qualities are manifested in their general behavior, teaching activities, outlook, language, relationships, and results. It was then a matter of observing their teaching in some detail and discussing with them their practices and the principles behind it.